My name is Rebecca Kozak, and I am so excited to be able to bring this segment to you with the one and only pharmacist Benjamin Fuchs. So today I would like you to share, please, Ben, a little bit about what got you into more of nutrition and looking at the nutrition side as being trained as a pharmacist and continuing on as a pharmacist.
Yeah, it seems like counterintuitive. Like, why would a pharmacist be doing nutrition? But let me think of where it began. It kind of began in pharmacy school when we spent a lot of time studying toxicity and side effects. In fact, we spent most of our time studying either toxicity of medication or how you mitigate or reduce toxicity of medication at the research level when they're developing drugs, or at the practical level when patients are taking drugs. We spent a lot of time emphasizing the toxicity of medication, of drugs. And it just didn't sit right with me that I wanted to help people. And I was studying literally medicine, but most of what I was studying was how to mitigate the problems associated with the medicine that was supposed to heal people. And then right around the second or third semester of pharmacy school, something interesting happened. And that is we started to study nutrition as a pharmacist would study nutrition. But we didn't study nutrition like a dietitian studies nutrition or like a food scientist or like a doctor. We studied the medicinal properties of nutrients, the healing properties of nutrients, the healing properties of essential fatty acids for the skin, the healing effects of vitamin A for the eyes, the healing properties or effects of vitamin K and vitamin D for the bones and for the joints, etc. We started to study nutrition as healing modalities, and we also started to study what were referred to as chronic disease states as nutritional deficiencies. We studied the nutritional deficiency component of diabetes or of osteoporosis or of autoimmune disease or of digestive problems. So starting in pharmacy school, at the beginning of pharmacy school, I'm studying toxicity and feeling very troubled by it. And then along the middle of pharmacy school, we got into nutrition, and it started to connect with me. Now, aside from that, I was also an athlete. And as an athlete, you're always looking for like whatever could give you an edge better in your performance. And so we were studying nutrition in the 1980s. It was very primitive back then, but I was reading the bodybuilding magazines and the weightlifting magazines, and they were all about the creatine and the whey protein and the alpha ketoglutarate and the HMB. And there were all these weird nutritional things that people were taking back then. So I was already predisposed to being comfortable with nutrition. I go into pharmacy school, I'm studying toxicity and meds. Around the middle of pharmacy school, I'm studying nutrition and disease states as nutritional deficiencies, the medicinal properties of nutrients. I graduate pharmacy school and it clicks. I'm like, why are we not suggesting and using and recommending nutrients instead of drugs? And as a pharmacist, as a young pharmacist, I started doing just that. And this is the 1980s. And you were a health nut. Remember this? You were a health nut if you were into nutrition. And so there weren't vitamin stores everywhere, and it wasn't like you had the internet, you could buy nutrients. So it was still pretty unknown, this idea of nutrition. But I took it upon myself to start to recommend to my patients nutritional supplements. People would have a cold, and I'd say, hey, maybe you want some vitamin C with your antibiotic. Or people would have be on taking an antihypertensive, a calcium channel blocker. And I would say, hey, magnesium may support your heart. It may help your calcium channel blocker work even better. Or, they would be getting medicines, and I would suggest nutritional supplements with their medications. And what started to happen, surprise, surprise, people would get better. They would be able to reduce the dose of their medication. They would feel better. And aside from their symptoms improving, they would actually feel better. Sometimes they lost weight. They just had a better physical presence in life when they started doing these supplements. And I got a little cocky, I remember. And I was like, I was a kid, I was in my 20s. And so I started suggesting to people, instead of taking nutritional supplements with their medication, I started suggesting people take nutritional supplements instead of their medication. So I started saying things like, maybe you don't want that calcium channel blocker. Maybe you want to try some magnesium instead. Because I was starting to see that people's bodies were responding positively. So I said, hey, let's go all out. Well, long story short, I ended up getting fired from Kmart Pharmacy. And I started my own pharmacy. I started a pharmacy where there were no drugs in it. It was only skincare, because my background was skincare, as you know, probably. I've been compounding skincare products for many years. And I started a skincare nutritional pharmacy. And again, this was the early 1990s. This was 1991. And it was still really weird. People still didn't understand the power of nutrition. But little by little, the things I was talking about started to become more and more popular in the zeitgeist in the world, and people were starting to hear that what Pharmacist Ben, or what Ben had been talking about for many years, is now starting to become verified and validated by even the mainstream, to the point today where even you go on WebMD, or you go to Healthline, or all of these mainstream medical therapeutic kinds of websites, and they're all talking about vitamin D, and they're talking about vitamin C, and they're talking about zinc. It's become normalized. What was really weird when I started. So I got into it because I wanted to help people. That was the reason I got into pharmacy. I loved chemistry. I loved biochemistry. I wanted to help people. And I found that nutrition was much more helpful to people, number one, because it was really what the body craved. And number two, because many of the health challenges people were dealing with were, at the end of the day, at least partially, nutritional deficiencies. So I could do the best work with nutrition. And by the way, I should say this. When we think of pharmacy today, we think of pharmacology. We think of drugs. And so medicine and drugs have become two terms that have been conflated. They've been combined. They've been collapsed into each other. So every time somebody thinks medicine, they immediately think drugs. But that's only about 150 years old. That's only, that whole collapsing of two separate ideas of medicine and drugs into one concept began about the middle of the 19th century, when we started to figure out how to manipulate organic chemistry. Organic chemistry, which is behind pharmaceutical chemistry, didn't even exist before 1820 or the 1820s, somewhere in there. And then around 1850, 30 years later, they started to make drugs. Before then, though, when you went to get medicine at the pharmacy, the pharmacist would take herbs, or he would take plants, and he'd crush them up in a little mortar and pestle, and he'd maybe tincture them in some alcohol and give you a bottle of liquid and tell you to take a couple droppers full. Or maybe he'd make some capsules with it. The medicine before 1850 was not drugs. The medicine before 1850 was natural. It was plants. Now, they didn't know about nutrition, so we've taken it a step further. In the 20th century, we start to figure out about vitamins and essential nutrients. So now what I do is just kind of really like a grandfathering of what pharmacists have traditionally done. They took natural substances and they turned them into medicine. It's only been the last 150 years that medicine and pharmaceuticals, or medicine and drugs, have been combined to the point where people just assume as soon as you say medicine, most people will think pharmaceuticals. But previous to that, it was plants and herbs. And so what I'm doing is really just a continuation of that 1,000-year-old history of the pharmacist taking natural substances and turning it into things that have healing properties. Even Hippocrates, the famous physician Hippocrates, from where we get the Hippocratic Oath, which says, "Do no harm," he said, "Let food be thy medicine, and let medicine be thy food." And that was 2,000 years ago. So I'm just continuing in that tradition. It shouldn't come as that much of a shock to people. In fact, that it does is because the modern pharmaco-medical model has done such a great job marketing.
And I agree. And because that's where I started with using the herbs and making tinctures and stuff. So
Yes.
I'm very, very much into an appreciation for that. I love it. Now, you had mentioned toxicity.
Yeah.
What are some signs of toxicity?
Well, here's the thing. This is this is the foundation of the problem of pharmaceutical medicine. When you take a drug, the body has no idea what that substance is. When you take, let's take a drug like, let's take something as simple as, aspirin is similar, is very close. I was going to say aspirin, but let's say Tylenol. Say acetaminophen. Okay, Tylenol. You take your acetaminophen, and by the way, before I even get into this, there are times when drugs can come in very handy. All right, so I'm not Pollyannish about this. There are times when you need drugs. I just had dental surgery a couple weeks ago, and I was very glad that I had anesthetic that they could inject into my gums, and they gave me some Percocet to go home with. I was very, very happy. And they also gave me some dexamethasone, which is a steroid, to take to keep the inflammation down. I was very happy to have all those things. So the problem isn't drugs per se. The problem is the reliance on drugs. The problem is when we come to depend on drugs to help us get through issues that are initiated by poor lifestyle choices. And that's where I see the problem. Okay, so as far as toxicity goes, when you take a drug, something as benign as Tylenol, or something as severe as a beta blocker, a calcium channel blocker, whatever it is, you put it in your mouth, it goes into your bloodstream, and then the body vets everything that's in the blood. It interprets it, it sees it to see if it's friend or foe. When you eat vitamin C, or you eat an orange or an apple, or you take your Beyond Tangy Tangerine, or whatever it is, and it goes into the bloodstream, the body sees that substance and it says, all right, you guys are good, get to work, go make some cells, go create some biochemistry, or go build some bone, or whatever it is. It sends that substance off to work. It sees that substance as being friendly. With a drug, it sees that substance as being an invader, a deadly substance that has to be completely eliminated. The body cannot use drugs. The body cannot use drugs. Drugs can manipulate chemistry and create changes in biochemistry that can mitigate symptomology. That's true, but the body cannot use a drug. The body wants to eliminate a drug. When a body sees a drug, it wants to eliminate that substance because it sees that substance as an invader. Now, the way the cleaning up or detoxification system works is the detoxification system doesn't need to see exact replicas of substances. It can generalize. So it can interpret toxins as a family. So if something looks like it's in the family of a certain toxin, it can detoxify it. So it doesn't have to remember all 80,000 or 100,000 or however many different toxins there are out in the world today, including drugs. It can generalize by the chemical structure. And all drugs will fit the criteria of one of the classifications that the detoxification system is used to. So the body has a mechanism for getting rid of those substances. It doesn't have to recognize the acetaminophen, but you can see that the acetaminophen, i.e. Tylenol, is similar to other things, and it knows how to deal with those things. And so it will mobilize all of its enzymes and all of its chemistry to get rid of that drug. Okay, that's first of all. Now, the situation is so serious that the body is so effective at detoxifying that drug that the effective dose that you take has to be multiplied by a factor. So if you only need 1 or 2 or 3 units in order to get an effect, when you take the drug, you have to take 10 or 11 or 12 units to account for the body cleaning things out. You follow what I'm saying? The body will clean out the toxins, so the doctor has to give you a higher dose. The drug companies have to give you a higher dose to account for the fact that your body's getting rid of that substance. Okay? We have to overwhelm the detoxifying system so that you can get an effect. So the dose you take of a drug is much higher than you need because we've got to account for the fact that your body is cleaning that out. And by the way, if you're doing other toxins, like smoking, for example, or you're drinking a lot of alcohol, you got to even take a bigger dose because now your detoxification system is primed, it's going, it's working every day to get rid of the cigarette smoke or to get rid of the alcohol. So now you got to take an even extra high dose. That extra high dose that you take represents a burden. You've now overwhelmed the detoxification system of the body. And this does a couple of things. Number one, now you're going to get a toxic reaction. I'll tell you what that is in a second. But number two, and most importantly, all of that detoxification chemistry requires nutrition. So in order for your body to detoxify that Tylenol, it needs vitamin C. It needs vitamin E. It needs omega fatty acids. It needs copper. It needs magnesium. It needs manganese. It needs zinc. It needs a whole host of nutrients. Essentially, it needs the mighty 90 essential nutrients in order to do its detoxification work, which means the more Tylenol you're taking or prescription drugs, the more deficient you're going to be in vitamin C. The more deficient you're going to be in manganese. The more deficient you're going to be in vitamin E. The more drugs you're taking, the more nutrient deficient you are. And considering that you may not even need the drugs if you weren't nutritionally deficient in the first place, now you've added to the nutritional deficiency load. So you ask about toxicity. There's several kinds of toxicity. One is the flat out toxicity from the substance that you're taking. Okay. But then there's also the secondary toxicity that's associated with deficiencies in the nutrients that are being expended, the resources that are being expended to clear out the drug. And those toxicities can be, for example, vitamin C is critical in the detoxification enzyme system. So now you're going to be deficient in vitamin C. Vitamin C deficiency can cause you to get more colds. Vitamin C deficiency can cause you to age faster. Vitamin C deficiency can cause heart disease and heart problems and vascular problems. Vitamin C deficiency can cause problems with blood fats. These are all issues that you may not even see as side effects or toxicity from the drug, but they could be intimately linked to it by virtue of the fact that you're losing nutrients in the detoxification process. So when you say toxicity, there's toxicity flat out from the drug, that's a toxin. But then there's a secondary toxicity that's associated with nutritional deficiencies. And in order to name all the possible things that can happen, you'd have to name everything that can go wrong. Anything's possible. Deficiencies in vitamin C can cause a whole spectrum of toxic effects that you're not even going to associate with the drug. Deficiencies in vitamin E, same way. Manganese, copper, same, all of these things. So what's possible as a toxicity from taking a prescription drug? Anything. And the scary thing is you may never associate it with that prescription drug because of this secondary nature. Does that make sense? Because of the nutritional deficiencies that are associated with it. So are drugs important and helpful? Yes, I have no problem with that. It's the reliance on them. If you are on a prescription drug, there's several things that you can do. Aside from the fact that you maybe want to work on the problem, the cause of the problem, which is usually foundational in the digestive system or the blood sugar system or the adrenal thyroid complex. As I talk about, there's 3 points where all health challenges are. Aside from that, which you should be doing, there are things you could do to mitigate the damage from the drugs. Number one is if you're on prescription drugs, get on a supplement program. Get on the Healthy Start Pack. If the doctor says you're going to be on this beta blocker the rest of your life, get on the Healthy Start Pack and you'll reduce some of the top possible damage that's associated with the body trying to get rid of that stuff. Number two, you can do things that improve digestive functioning because at the end of the day, the toxins are eliminated through the bowels and through the liver with the help of the liver and the kidneys. You can support those systems. And there's lots of ways to do that. If you're on prescription drugs, a probiotic like the Nightly Essence or the Daily Digest is a must-have. It's not an option. The Ultimate Enzymes, it's a must-have. It's not an option. Things that help support bile, for example. And by the way, bile is arguably, next to the blood, the most important fluid in the body. And everybody knows about bile for the digestive system, but bile is how the body eliminates toxins. So the more you're supporting your bile system with the Ultimate Enzymes, for example, and omega fatty acids also, and cholesterol, because cholesterol is part of bile, the more efficient your body's detoxification system is going to be, or elimination system is going to be. So there's lots of things that you could do to mitigate the damage of the drugs, aside from the fact that maybe you want to work on the problem that you're using the medication to treat at the causal level. And I said earlier how there's no drugs that the body can use, although there's drugs that will affect the body. It's not like the body can use those drugs. At the same time, there are no drugs that can heal the body. Drugs do not heal. That's not how they work. Only God heals. Only nutrition heals. Only biochemistry heals. Only the cell heals. And it does it all together through biochemistry and through nutrition and through the cell and through God and through our minds and through our emotions. That's where healing comes from. Drugs do not heal. What a drug does is it stabilizes markers or it stabilizes symptomology. Are there times you want to stabilize symptomology? Yes, absolutely. But don't put a responsibility on medication that they're not able to handle. The medication's responsibility is not to heal anybody. It's supposed to stabilize you and reduce symptomology or symptoms if they're getting out of control. But if you want to get better, you get better by lifestyle. And that's what I've always talked about since I started doing this. When we talk about nutrition, I love nutrition because I love chemistry. I'm a chemistry geek, I had a chemistry set when I was a little kid and I read about chemistry and I'm just fascinated with chemistry. But really, it's much more than chemistry. It's much more than nutrition. It's multidimensional, as I talk about all the time. It's SMEP. It's spiritual, it's mental, it's emotional, and physical. And most importantly, it's us. It's in our lives. You don't need to go outside of ourselves. You never should need to go outside of this amazing human body to heal yourself, with the exception of the essential nutrients. The way the system is set up, essential nutrients have to come in from the outside. And that's what we want to be making sure we have, is the essential nutrients. So I hope that's not, I know that's a long-winded answer. We said we were only going to go 10 minutes.
No, I think that was a great combination of how pharmaceuticals react within the body and how the underlying cause of most things being nutritional deficiencies and needing that extra nutrition when you are on a pharmaceutical.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
of the way the body is designed.
Yes, you're putting a major stress on the body. Taking a prescription drug is like smoking cigarettes. Now, you get a benefit in the sense that you're going to alleviate some symptoms, you know, with a drug that you're not going to get with cigarettes, but to the body, the detoxification, the toxicity and the detoxification machinery that have to kick in are the same. The more you're smoking, the more nutritional supplementation you need. In fact, after every cigarette, you should be swigging Beyond Tangy Tangerine to deactivate some of the toxicity that's in your mouth and in your throat. So the more bad, sometimes people say, oh, I'm smoking, I'm drinking, I'm eating crappy, I don't need to supplement, you know, I'm doing all these bad things. No, you need more. You need to supplement more, you know, and the more drugs you're on, the more you need to supplement, you could reduce the damage that's associated with that. And by the way, as far as toxicity goes, the number one side effect and by the way, I hate the word side effect because that implies that it's an accident. It's not accidental. It's part of it's how they work. It's how drugs work. They have effects. There's no side effects. Those are effects. So you can't take a drug without effects. And the number one effect of a drug, aside from the target that lowering the blood pressure or whatever it's doing, aside from that, the number one effect of a drug is nausea and vomiting and diarrhea. Okay, if you look at this, you go look at the PDR, the physician's desk reference that has all the package inserts. It always says the adverse reactions that are possible or side effects that are possible. You'll always see number one, nausea and vomiting and diarrhea. Why do you suppose that is?
The body's trying to get rid of it.
Exactly. Exactly. The body's trying to get rid of it. So it makes you nauseous, makes you want to throw up, or it gives you diarrhea so you can eliminate it through your bowels. So that's the number one toxicity and side effect. And then the second most, the third most after nausea and vomiting and diarrhea are skin reactions, or rashes. Again, to the body is trying to eliminate things. So it's eliminating it as best as it can, and it tries to eliminate it through the skin, and that activates an immune system, a defensive reaction, and the skin's loaded with defensive cells and with immune system cells. And so you get immune reactions as well. So the next most common effect is rashes and itching. Just weird skin things can happen. And then probably the fourth thing is neurological, because the brain is using up blood more than any other system in the body. Dizziness, wooziness, fatigue, brain issues are probably the next most common. So it's digestive, diarrhea, nausea and vomiting, skin reactions, neurological reactions. Those are the basic ones, brain and neurological reactions. Those are the basic toxicities and side effects, and anything is possible. And then you throw in the nutritional deficiencies, and then anything's, of course, literally anything's possible.
Awesome. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
sharing all of that information. Ben, you are just such a wealth of information from all of your experience in using the things that you were passionate about to help others has just been incredible. And
thank you. I appreciate that.
Those people that
I
you
appreciate
have.
that. You're doing the same thing. You know, you and I and people in longevity, people who are really doing it in longevity, serious about it, we're on purpose. We're on point. And all the stuff that's going on in the world today, you know what? Let it happen. We're on point. We're here to make a difference in the world. If anybody out there feels connected with that, feels like they want to make a difference in the world, this is a beautiful opportunity to do it at the most fundamental level there is, which is the level of good health and nutrition.
Absolutely. So, and if you are one of those people that want to do what we do, get back with the person that shared this video with you and say, hey, I want to know what they're talking about, using a passion to build a business, because every day I wake up with excitement. What I do is not like work, Pharmacist Ben. I don't know about you, but this is something that I love so much.
Yeah.
And working with people and helping people and hearing their testimonials of how life is changing for the better for them. It just keeps driving me. I love it.
Awesome. That's awesome. And you're doing an amazing job. And anybody who is listening to this video, if you want to learn how you can turn longevity and all this stuff we're talking about here with health and nutrition into a real live business that you can work out from the comfort of your own home, Rebecca is the gal to talk to.
Well, thank you so much, Ben. I appreciate you.
Thank
Mwah.
you. I appreciate you.